All right, so welcome to course mapping or mapping out a course. And first, we're going to start with course learning objectives. You'll see that we're using an online course map, but everything you learn here could be applied to a hybrid course map, in person, HyFlex, whatever it is that you're dealing with, this also applies. So the first thing we're going to take a look at are the course learning objectives. Now, if you want to go a step further, like we've been working on in Module 3, you can also always add in your program learning objectives, which adds an extra step of alignment to make sure that your course supports the program as well. So the course learning outcomes, again, should align directly with those program learning outcomes. Whether or not those PLOs or program learning outcomes are listed here or not. They're listed here or not, those CLOs should align and basically serve as a roadmap for the entire course, guiding it to kind of an ultimate destination. So, for example, if one of our program learning outcomes is to demonstrate proficiency in industry standard tools, software, and techniques for digital graphics, then courses within that program, at least one or maybe more, probably more, should include opportunities for students to learn, apply, and demonstrate mastery of those tools, software, and techniques. Okay, another um, point on this course map is going to be the MLOs or module learning objectives. You're going to want to align or specifically connect those to CLOs. By doing so, as long as those CLOs are attached to the PLOs, as we saw here, then you're making sure that MLOs support CLOs, which support PLOs, and things are in alignment. Each one is supporting the other and making sure that that course plays a pivotal role in the entire program. All right, so those MLOs will serve as the individual directions that lead to the ultimate goal. So just like on a map, if I'm trying to get from Las Cruces to Phoenix, great. Phoenix is my goal, right? It's my ultimate objective. But in the meantime, I have uh, who knows how many left and rights. I have traffic to contend with that I need to work around or learn to master. I have detours. I have heavy traffic. Everything is included on the way from Cruces to Phoenix. And that's kind of what we're working on here. So, for example, if one of the CLOs is to apply advanced features of Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator to design and edit digital images, and so on, then an MLO could be to explain advanced tools and features in Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator. It's kind of a foundational um, activity or action that you can measure that specifically supports this course learning objective. All right, so next, let's take a look at assessments. So in modules 1 and 2, we talked about, or at least in module 2, we talked about backward course design, where you think about what your objectives are, right? And then you think about how I'm going to assess those. If I want students to know this, how do I plan to prove that they know it? Well, in our example here, if my goal was to explain advanced tools and so on, then I'll need to have an assignment or discussion, something graded that requires them to explain, as we see here. And that's kind of where we start. Um, Assessments differ from activities and almost can be the same. There's something that is worth a grade that factors into the overall grade or um, evaluation of that course. It's something that we place weight on, that we place emphasis on or importance on to say that to say to students and imply that by passing this, we can be sure that you got the knowledge out of this that you were supposed to. It can be an activity, but one of the most important deciding factors of whether it's purely an activity or an assessment or both, it can appear in both columns here, is that it is graded and it bears weight in the course. All right. So we have what we need for an assessment if we're planning on eh, measuring goals. The next step, our left and right in our map, is to plan activities and practices, practice activities that will help students succeed. So we say, okay, to succeed and explaining something, you know, what will I need to give them to support them to make sure they can do that? So, for example, we might have students take screenshots while exploring those tools in Adobe and then label them to explain each feature's purpose. Just as an example, it doesn't have to be this, it could be anything you choose or innovate or learn over the years, but something that aligns with that assessment, an activity that gives them practice uh, in the assessment that you're planning. We don't want to tell them to go left, though, definitely, and they need to go right. In other words, you don't want to give them busy work or some practice activity that doesn't support the assessment. Some people might feel like this is teaching to the test, sort of a theory or practice, but it's not quite that. What it is making sure that you're not going down a rabbit hole or going off topic. There are goals for that course, and all we're saying in this presentation is to stick to those goals. How can we make sure students achieve those goals, and how can we support them in doing so? What can we give them? What activities? What uh, materials can we give them to make sure they succeed? And that's what takes us to the next step. We need to plan out and provide all the learning materials that support that. So if they're going to explain here and be evaluated on it, maybe they could have some practice here. And then maybe, for example, they could have a link to frequently asked questions about Adobe, Photoshop and Illustrator, maybe a handbook if that's possible, or a guide, along with a video maybe you made and instructions on how to take screenshots and label. Those are additional. We expect them to do that. Maybe not everyone knows how to begin with, so you just offer them some instructions. All right, so you might be wondering how all this connects to the bridge and generally AI. Well, AI can support you at every single step that we talked about. Just like we use Google Maps to guide us to a destination, AI can offer our direction, alternate suggestions, maybe even innovative, maybe even something creative that sparks your own creativity for you to design something, or helpful suggestions, or even can offer suggestions on whether or not what we're doing is aligned. It can guide the learning process, provide insights, and so on. So that's just what we're trying to get to here with the Bringe Institute. How can we leverage AI for our own innovative purposes in teaching and learning?